what would it feel to be the genius and not the spectator?
The Casual Genius Podcast.
So our guest today is a young man named Ahmad Taleb. He's currently Melbourne City's youth team goalkeeper, Australian under-17 representative as well, preparing to go to the World Cup in Brazil later this year. And he recently began an app and a platform for youth athlete mental health called FitMind App. Now, I've seen some of these podcasts and some of the material that you've put out. It's actually some fantastic stuff. Welcome, first of all, man.
Thanks for having me. Just trying to get the word out for youth athletes' mental health is something that I think that's not looked at too much.
So Ahmad joins us today on the back of starting FitMind, and you're a kid who, well, not a kid, you're a young man now who I've known for a while to be a bit of an anomaly as a youth footballer. I've been a technical director myself for a number of years, and I still remember, and I still actually tell people about the conversations that we used to have when you would have been probably 12 years of age after games, and you'd dissect games like an adult. You'd come to me and ask for advice, and then you'd say, "Oh, did you see that bit? Did you see that?" And there was always this thing about you that you thought differently about the game and about sport than most other young people. And it's something that's stuck with me because it's something that I mention quite regularly. How did FitMind come about? What spurred the idea?
So I remember when I got home after the session, and I was frustrated with my training session, and I remember telling my mum that I'm done. Like I can't. I'm just not enjoying it anymore and stuff like that.
Was this after Melbourne City session?
This was after a couple of training sessions. I was thinking about it for like a long time, but it got to a point where I was like, God, I need help. And my mum was I can speak to her as well as my dad about anything. They're straight with me, straight down the line. My mum's obviously not a psychologist or anything like that, but she gives advice that helps me. And so she thought in her mind was she wanted to create a community of raising awareness for youth athletes' mental health, because she's seen me and seen all the barriers that I've gone through, where I just look down and I'm isolating myself from people that I shouldn't have, but it's what happens with me because I'm that passionate about the game, and all I need is that one piece of advice from someone that can help me.
And so that's how the idea for FitMind came about. You wanted to give almost like a central location for youth athletes to seek that advice. That's what I've gathered from it, from what I've seen so far. And I know you enough as a person. I spent a year with you back at Melbourne Zebras, and I've seen you through the state programs and through national programs, and you've come a long way yourself personally. I remember you used to have, after games, you know, if you thought you had a poor game, you'd be so difficult to speak to. And now I've seen you have poor games or a poor session, and it's almost like water off a duck's back. You just, what did you find mentally? Was it something that triggered a change? Was it an event that made you think, this is probably not helping me as a young athlete who wants to play at the very highest level?
I think being in an environment at Melbourne City with tough coaches spurred me on in a way. So it's not if you show attitude or bad body language in that sort of environment, it's not like at an NPL club where you can do that and it's just brushed off. Like they acknowledge it and they tell you that that can't, not here. Last year at the Under-7 Asian Cup, something that triggered like you said.
So you say there was a moment at the Asian Cup, and obviously for those who aren't aware, this is often the first time that a player goes away as part of a national team camp. Usually national team camps, the first few for an under-17 Joey's player take place within Australia.
Yep.
So you might go into state, or you might travel, away from home for a few days or a couple of weeks here and there. But this is usually the first time in a tournament setting, in a competitive setting, that you go away and you leave the country. And so what was it during that tournament that triggered a change in behaviour, in mentality?
I think I went into the tournament being number one. We were playing our first game against South Korea, and we had just copped a goal, and my old habits started to come into play. So I was
what were some of those old
like
habits?
just losing my temper,
Blaming others, or
but both, just
yourself?
Just doubt, a lot of doubt that we could bring it back even at 2-0, and I lost my temper during a drinks break, and that cost me my position, my starting place for the rest of the tournament. And when I got back, it was the worst feeling I've ever had.
So it's experiences like this, because I'd imagine for a young player, it's difficult at any level of sport to lose your position. It's difficult in any walk of life to lose your position, but in sport, it tends to happen a lot. And in youth football, in youth sports, it tends to happen a lot, where players, perhaps they might grow, they might mature at different rates, and all of a sudden you find yourself, you were the number one, or you were the incumbent for that position, and now you're no longer. I think it's experiences like this that many coaches and many sporting organisations don't appreciate in young athletes, especially those playing at the very, very highest level. It's hard sometimes. I can speak as a coach. Sometimes you're thinking a lot about your own nervousness or anxiety, or you're thinking about how is this player going to react, or how is that player going to react, and it can be difficult to think of the player's emotions when you make a decision. And I think a platform like FitMind gives young athletes somewhere to go other than their coaches, because sometimes, I don't want to speak for all coaches, but sometimes as a coach you can brush it off. I was listening to Gary Neville recently, and Gary Neville was mentioning when he was working with Raheem Sterling in the England national setup, and he mentioned something that along the lines of Raheem Sterling came to see him and the coaching staff about the criticism that he was receiving, and he thought, he was one of the coach's favourites, and they said, you're one of the boys, but Gary Neville said at the time, I didn't realise how much reassurance he actually needed and how much help he actually needed. And there is a lot done for professional athletes in terms of psychology and in terms of mental health and support, but there isn't much for youth athletes. So for you, you're someone who's playing in football probably at the highest level. Well, no, not probably. You are at the highest level. You're representing your country. Yeah. Would you say that there are support systems in place for players who are trying to deal with those emotions and trying to deal with the challenges of making it as a professional athlete?
It also depends on the type of person that you are as well. For people that aren't like that, it's very difficult, because if you're very insecure about speaking to your parents or speaking to a coach, that could affect you, because they could think, if I tell him that I'm mentally not ready, I'm not going to start, or I won't play, and I don't think that's how it should be. But luckily,
this is a big one. Yeah.
And luckily enough, I had a few coaches that helped me, including yourself, that when they could see that I was passionate about the game, and obviously when I was younger, I took it the wrong way and shouldn't have lost my temper in certain moments towards players, towards coaches, but I was lucky enough to have someone there that told me, no, this isn't right. There's always a better way to handle yourself in front of others. But for the people that don't have that, this is why FitMind is so important, so they can talk to high-profile sports psychologists and other things, etc.
So is that what you're planning to do with the platform? You're planning to bring sports psychs and you're planning to bring other experts in so that they can give proper guidance?
Yeah, so at the moment it's talking to a lot of psychologists that people can speak to on the app. There's a lot of other modes within the app that are going to be, that has to do with like meditation, flow. Just say they look at my podcast, they can look at some of my experiences and how they could relate. How could someone relate to being dropped and how they dealt with it?
But I think the most important thing is seeing someone of their own age doing it, because it's very different if a professional athlete's telling you about how I overcame this, but the difference is they're in a full-time professional environment a lot of the time, so they're not dealing with school, they're not dealing with, so it's a little bit different. And I wanted to bring your attention actually, because I was listening recently to there's a guy named Toto Wolff. He's the team principal of Mercedes in Formula One, and he mentioned that he's about to launch an app. I'm not too sure what the app's called. I can find out and I can put a link to it at the bottom of this episode. But it was basically almost like a 24-hour medical service, but for mental health. So it was like an app that you can log into, and if you require some assistance, you can get it instantly through this app. And I think a lot of the times apps like that and initiatives like that are targeted towards adults, and there isn't much for young people, especially athletes who are at the very highest level of their craft or aiming for the highest levels. You mentioned meditation as well, and states of flow and other positive states of mentality. And what I wanted to ask you was, has any of that ever been explored in any of the programs that you've been a part of? So either at City or in the Australian national teams, have they done anything around working out a way to, I know there's a sports psych in England named Dan Abrahams who calls it game face, for example. So he basically gives his players or his clients tools to get into a game mode or in the zone. Has anything like that been worked on?
The other day we actually, as a team, we had 2 ladies from Manchester City come to talk to us from a group called City Tough. So they spoke to us about all the tools you need to be mentally strong, no matter what the case is during a game. With the national team, they bring a psychologist and talk to us about the importance of staying strong, no matter how vulnerable you are during a game, during training. If you think this is happening, just focus on yourself, because I think that's a main bit of being a youth footballer. Because I think too much in the youth football industry, people tend to worry about what someone else is doing instead of what they're doing, and that affects them the most.
Has that specialist been brought in on a temporary basis, or are they with the team permanently? Say when you go away for like an Asian Cup or World Cup qualifiers or things like that, do they come with the team, or are they just brought in on a temporary basis?
Usually during camps in Australia they come, but overseas there hasn't been many. There hasn't been at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I find that the most interesting, because it's obviously a camp's preparation, but usually when you go overseas, that's when you're in the thick of it, and that's maybe where something like FitMind can benefit athletes, because especially when you're away from home, and this doesn't only happen in football. There are multiple other sports where youth athletes have to go away to tournaments or carnivals, or they have to represent their country or their state away from home. And sometimes when you're away from home, you don't have that same support. You can't go and see your parents. You can maybe call them on the phone. It's a wonderful time we live in. You can FaceTime them, but it's not the same as having somebody there. And sometimes for a young athlete, they're not comfortable talking to their parents or talking to their friends, especially over the phone, about something like that. So having that almost like a third party, I think it's comforting, especially for if you're someone who's not really that open with these sort of emotions, or it's the first time you've experienced them maybe, and you don't really know what's going on, and you're a little bit embarrassed maybe to ask your parents, or you're a little bit embarrassed to ask your coaches, especially in that competitive environment, like you said. So what I was going to ask you are, what are some of the common behaviors from coaches or officials that can impact the mental states of young players?
Coaches on a physical and skill level are really good. Obviously, that's what they're there for. But when it comes to talking about like having a conversation, don't get me wrong, there's a majority of coaches that you can talk to, but there's some people that, like we said, that are uncomfortable with letting people know about their feelings, which is wrong, which shouldn't ever.
There are coaches that are in that boat as well. Yeah. And what I wanted to ask you is FitMind, or your idea around FitMind, are you planning to open up that education to young coaches as well? Because there are a lot of young coaches who are coming through, but a lot of the focus for them tends to be on the tactical side of the game, or the technical side of the game. And again, if someone's not open to these sorts of emotions, it can be a real benefit to them, for them to have a third party to go through.
We've actually got a Facebook account that shows parents how to deal with their kids, but it can also be applicable to coaches, because you can, as a coach, you can be able to learn how to deal with kids in a better manner.
It's very different now, isn't it? It's like I go back to when I was playing, and oh man, I've been berated by coaches before in the past. Absolutely berated. Yeah. And I don't think mental health or emotion, it wasn't really talked about as openly as it is now. And I'm sure there would have been players around me, and I'm sure I felt it at times as well, either being dropped or, not performing badly, and then having that on top. But it wasn't spoken about. It's very different now, and a lot more young people are in tune with these types of emotions. So I think the landscape and the environment's changed for youth coaches as well. Yeah. And it's something that if they don't have the education, or if they don't have a resource that can help them to deal with it, they might not be best placed to help a young person through that. Yeah. And it's a very interesting thing, because I know even since I became a coach, I started off the first couple of years, I was just going by what, the coaching that I got. And I'm sure players see, for example, they'll see the first team and they'll say like, oh, look at that. He's missed a chance, or he's been dropped, and he's still fighting for it. But there are some strategies and tactics behind the scenes. Yeah. And what I wanted to ask you was, what are some of the ones that you use now? Because I know, like I said earlier, you used to have some pretty strong reactions to poor performances or to whatever it was, and now you don't seem to have that. You can see there's still that passion and that fire, but you don't have that such a strong negative reaction.
I think I've gone to a psychologist that helped me a lot. We spoke about things that we can't control, things that are uncontrollable, and things that we can influence. And I think after that session that I had with him, that really opened my eyes to how I should react and what I can influence. Like, it just made me a lot more calmer during the game when a negative thing happened on the field, whether that's a goal conceded.
Is there a specific technique that you use? Like, say, for example, you've just copped a goal and you can feel yourself going into where I coach at the moment, we call it blue head and red head after the All Blacks.
That's what we, like I told you about City Tough, that's what we were speaking about the other day. And
is there something that you can feel yourself moving into red head, so to speak? And are there certain techniques that you use to bring yourself back to that equilibrium?
I think as a goalkeeper, when I'm speaking, because as a goalkeeper you've got to talk a lot, and I think I feel that when I'm enjoying myself, when I go into the field and I'm enjoying myself, I feel like there's no reason whatsoever for me to be angry at this person whatsoever. And that's how it always should be, even during training.
No one makes a mistake on purpose.
And if that's me making a mistake or one of my teammates and it's a goal conceded, it's something that we can't control, but what we can influence is them reacting and doing something better. And yeah, that's just my mentality as of.
So you focus more on the reaction to something happening rather than the event itself. You don't really replay that event in your head. And I'm sure you would get instances, I know I still do, even as a coach, something goes wrong and sometimes you replay that event and then you use that technique, whether it's a breath. Like I know for me, if I can feel myself moving into redhead during a game, I'll use something called tortoise breath. So a lot of, I can't remember who mentioned this to me, but apparently tortoises are the longest living creatures on earth because they take the slowest, longest breaths. Yeah. So they basically slow down their heartbeat. So I've actually got it tattooed on my arm.
Yeah. Oh.
So it's something that if I can feel myself going into redhead, I'll start to breathe really slowly and it'll just bring me back to that. Yeah. And then I'll think about, as you said, that reaction and how can I improve from what's just happened? What can I do next to make sure that doesn't happen again? And how can I, as a coach, how can I help my team? Yeah. Or if it's something else outside of football, how can I come back from that as quickly as possible? And I think it's tools like that. It's, we can speak about players being open or coaches being open and, you can give people motivation or you can help them to open up. But when there are real tangible tools that people can use and, they've seen people use. So someone like you, I'm sure there are so many young players and that would love to be in the same boat as you. They would love to be playing for the national team. And, I'm sure there are people sitting there listening going, shouldn't you be grateful if you're playing at that level? Yeah. And, it's, you can, but there's a thing about people that we adapt very quickly to our environment. And sometimes once you've adapted to the environment, you feel the same pressures and you feel the same challenges that other people would have in any other walk of life. So it doesn't necessarily mean, because you're playing at the highest level, it's all happy now, I'm playing for Australia. It's, you adapt very, very quickly to that. It's having the tools to overcome these things regardless of what environment you're in. Yeah. So, whether you're playing for your country or whether you're playing representative basketball or you're playing, whatever it is you're doing, if you've got specific tools or if you've got this additional voice that you can go to, then I think that helps everyone, especially young people. Because I think FitMind, I was thinking about it on the way here, and it doesn't, I know it's tailored towards sport, isn't it? Yeah. Youth athletes. But I think it would be a phenomenal resource for kids who are going through exams. Their studies as well. 100%. And maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's something that you can do later on, but it's, it's a fantastic resource. And I think what I wanted to get to the bottom of was when you had the idea for FitMind, when it came to your mind, were there certain steps that you took to put it into action? Was it something that, were you thinking about it for 6 months and then you went, maybe this is something, maybe I can start? Or was it like, this is something I need to do and I need to do it now?
People put on like a perception of them being happy, them being fine when they're around you in a sport environment. Then when they get home, they think it's the end of the world. Like they're not enjoying themselves whatsoever. Like it's nearly like a fake perception, but it's something that they think they have to put on.
So the process for you was it something urgent that you think needed to come out, and what were the steps that you took to bring FitMind to life? You've mentioned that that's a pretty strong feeling for someone to have in elite youth sport, and someone who you'd imagine, everyone grows up thinking, I want to play for, an A-League team, and it's pretty confronting, and it's pretty sad that someone who is playing at that level can have feelings like that. And what I wanted to know was that something that triggered you to begin FitMind, and did you do it in an urgent manner? So when you had the idea for FitMind, was it like, I know people that need this help now, and did you take certain steps to get there, or was it something that was sort of brewing for 6 months and then you thought about it and then you put a plan in place?
Yeah, so so I was thinking about it because I know that I'm not the only one in sport and youth sport that struggles with that struggled with pressure, with dealing with pressure, anxiety, resilience after making a mistake. That just triggered me saying that I know a lot of people are going through this at the moment, and I think this community could bring everyone together and make the not okay be okay. And I think at the moment, it's, as a community right now, we're growing every single day, and a lot of people are sending messages saying that I'm not trying to basically say that FitMind has saved people. I'm just saying that when we bring a community of people together that want to share their feelings to someone, and when they do, it's amazing, because I know that if I can help someone realize in themselves that they are good enough to do what they want to do, then that's enough for me.
Is there, you got me thinking now, because obviously if someone's thinking like that, if you're a youth athlete and you're, sometimes you can only see one singular path, and sometimes it's important also to know that this is not the be all and end all. Yeah. There are many other things that you can do. Like, look at yourself, for example. You're currently playing for Australia, yet you've just gone and started your own podcast as well. So, there are many things that you can do. And someone who, most people I know who are playing youth sport just in general, let alone at the highest level, are quite talented people. So they're geniuses in their own right. You put them on the pitch, they're a genius. Sometimes you give them, a clipboard and a whistle, and they'll be an unbelievable coach. Or you give them, a couple of books, and they'll be an incredible teacher. And they maybe haven't discovered that yet. Is there some sort of support, or is there some sort of information out there for people or players like you to understand that? Because it seems to be that a lot of players and a lot of young athletes think that there's a really singular focus when they're in that environment.
I think it depends. Like I said before, it depends on the person of what they want to do. But within the national team and Melbourne City, like I said, the temporary visits of psychologists that come in, they obviously tell us that they tell us that it's not football. Obviously, everyone wants to succeed in football. That's at an elite level. But if that's not something that you want to do, then you can succeed in anything you put your mind to, because that's, at the end of the day, you want to enjoy yourself, because I know and you know that when you're not enjoying something, you're not doing well at it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and
are there any avenues or any opportunities to explore other talents that you know of? Are there any programs, for example, that allow you to, I don't know, for example, write something, or try something apart from football, or even educational? So to undertake a course, or undertake a trade or something like that perhaps the person's talented in but they don't know about. Are there any programs or any support systems like that?
No, honestly, not really. Support systems, it's really on and off. If I'm going to be totally honest, there's not really, obviously support systems are the coach that you have, the psychologist at the club, but not really at all to do with the national team or things like that.
And I'm assuming, because I know the football environment very well because I'm a part of it, I'm in the thick of it, but I'm assuming that there are other sports that are in a similar boat to football, where the dropout rate of elite youth athletes who don't become professionals and either become semi-professionals or they drop into just an amateur level is extremely high. So the percentage of players who actually make it as professionals in any sport, whether it's football or AFL or basketball, whatever it is so small. It's so minute, and the players who are outside of that small percentage, there isn't really, it's almost like they're just thrown back out. In our environment in football, it's like, go and find an NPL club and,
Yeah.
you know, we might see you in 3 years. And then that's it. So a player who's, a person who's had this singular focus for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, all of a sudden goes, now what?
Yeah, I don't enjoy. Yeah.
What do I do?
A lot are thrown in at a young age, and when they get to that age, like 14, 15, they tend not to enjoy it because it's a repetitive thing for some people. Another really big factor is parents. Some parents are very demanding of their kid to play sport or play soccer, even if the kid themselves don't want to do it. They're just doing it to make their parents happy, which should no way be right. I think FitMind is a good platform for kids to talk and speak their mind, because holding it in for that long, for being thrown in at a young age and then end up not liking the sport at all, and
Or out of the system.
Basically wanting to drop out and completely do another sport is, it's a massive. It shouldn't be anywhere near the sport, but unfortunately that's how the world is.
Yeah, and it's what I wanted to say was that those players that do drop out, the ones who, you know, they fall out of love with the game because of that bottleneck at senior level or at professional level, or, you know, they all of a sudden they realize they're not going to become a professional footballer and they have to drop to a lower level and they have to do something else with their life. It's not always easy. If you haven't had that opportunity beforehand while you're training as a young player, or while you're you're growing up, you haven't had that opportunity to experience a different occupation or a different talent. You haven't, like I said earlier, there's so many youth athletes that I know who are so talented in many, many areas, not just the sport that they're playing, but a lot of the time, professional sport takes up a lot of time. Yeah. And if there aren't opportunities for them to explore these talents, sometimes you come out of an environment like that. You may come out of an environment like that thinking, well, I'm not really good at anything else. And this is a very dangerous thing for a young person to believe, because it's, from my experience, almost never true. Yeah. It's never true that a person's only good at one thing. Most people I've ever met in my life, including youth athletes, including, coaches, including whoever it is, are talented in multiple different areas. But it's important that they know that they can try something different during this phase. Obviously when you're a young elite athlete, you're preparing to be an elite athlete, and that's a strong focus. But during that preparation phase, let's call it, there needs to be an opportunity, or there needs to be a way for them to explore something else. Like I don't know, I go back to my previous question about you beginning FitMind, and I really want to know what, obviously you're very short for time as an elite youth athlete. Where do you find the time to do it? So my training schedule consists of 5 days a week. So Monday, I'm lucky enough to do homeschool, Virtual School Victoria, which is done on a laptop. So I end up doing virtual school because I wanted to free time up for football and also complete an education, because that's obviously a must. Because like we said, the percentage of players that make it through in their sport that they do is very minimal. So my schedule consists of Monday so we have to be there an hour and 15 minutes before training. What time is that?
So just say we have to turn up at 4:15. We could do gym before, and then we train at 5:30. So this happens every day.
Every single day.
Every single day. And then on Friday, it's obviously because it's the day before a game. It's a small session, and then we play Saturday. It could be night, it could be morning, it could be during the day.
And just for the record, to lighten some things up a little bit, Ahmed's actually coming off a 5-1 smashing of my team on Saturday.
So I think like my days off, like Wednesday and Sunday, or if I can finish my schoolwork during the week that it's perfect for me because time.
So how does the homeschool work? So they send you the resources?
So it's on our laptop, and you get emails from teachers. You can it's all on like it's like a platform, and at the moment you only study 4 subjects, or if you want to study lower, then that's
and you get to choose those?
Yeah, you get.
What are you studying? Which ones?
I'm studying English, general maths, psychology, and science.
So does that get you a VCE certificate, for example?
Yeah, it does.
So it does. Yeah, okay. So, because then what I was going to ask you is, now obviously, and there would be a lot of athletes in similar boats to you going through VCE in your age group, year 11, year 12, where they're starting to select their subjects and they're starting to think about potentially, hopefully, university or even TAFE or some sort of trade. If you weren't to become a professional footballer, what do you think you'd do?
I'd love to. I want to get into sports journalism or even sports psychology, because that's something that even from a young age, sports journalism, I'd love looking at others write in the paper about it, because that's essentially what everyone looks at in the news, whether that's in the newspaper or on a website, and I just love seeing stuff like that. It's just
certainly well spoken enough to do it. Yeah. Certainly well spoken. You have been since you were young, by the way. You know, Ahmed's been a pretty articulate character since I've known him. It's maybe something after your playing career, hopefully, but it's very important, and it's nice to know that you've got a pretty clear idea. You still want to stay in touch with sport. Yeah. But you're talking about sports psychology. You're almost beginning the first steps now with FitMind. But sports journalism, I think, that's something for you. Surely, I've watched couple of your podcasts. I watched the one with Idris Abdullahi as well. Idris is one of our boys at Brunswick City, and his stories are a very interesting one. It's very good. And obviously a teammate of yours now with the Joeys and with Melbourne City. What I wanted to ask you was, as part of the homeschooling and your weekly schedule, where does that leave time to explore other talents?
At the start, I found it hard because of obviously the motivation, and there's no teacher telling you do this, do that.
A bit like uni.
Yeah. And just time management. If you can, in homeschools, I'm telling you, it's all about time management. If you can get that little bit of time out of your day to do it, you're set for the week.
This would be something that perhaps for other young players, teammates who are in similar boats to you, who are thinking of exploring something or trying something different, it's maybe a matter of putting a schedule in place or doing something like that allows them, even if they're at school, they might have spare periods where, obviously they've got to get homework done in those. But if I think back to when I was in VCE and I was in year 11 or 12, you have a lot of spare periods. You have a lot. So, most schools give you more than enough to complete the required work, and that's maybe an option where I think state schools are banning phones. But I think most schools still have laptops and internet and all that sort of thing. So you've got the resources there on spare periods, and it's a matter of really identifying when you have that spare time and going, well, I know I want to try that, or I want to read about that, or I want to explore that. I'm going to do my work and finish it on time, and then in that spare hour, I'm going to do that. I'm going to read about that or learn about that. Because for someone who's playing sport at the highest level, the training schedule doesn't really give you an opportunity to do much else apart from play your sport. And that can mean that, like we said before, it gives a person a really singular focus only. Then you start to think, well, I'm a footballer,
Yeah.
and that's it. And you equate your entire existence, you associate your entire existence with being a footballer. And this is the problem that a lot of Premier League academies have started speaking about this. So people identify with being a footballer or being a basketballer or being a footy player. And then when that doesn't work out, all of a sudden they don't know what they are anymore.
Yeah, what they want to
or
do.
who they are. Yeah. And that's something that if you've got the opportunity to explore something different, or you compartmentalize your time, or you work out time to learn about new things or try something different, then it's not the be-all, it's not the end of the world.
It's not the be-all, end-all,
Yeah, and it's what happens is hopefully then that would flow into things like training. If there's a setback at training, or if there's a setback, you get dropped, for example, from your team, you're thinking, well, that's okay. I'm still going to fight. I'm still going to do everything that I can to get back, because I still want to make it, but it's not the end of the world. I've got this that I'm looking at as well on the side. What I wanted to ask you was, we spoke about, you said FitMind's going to branch into meditation and things like states of flow. Yeah. So states of flow are something that are a big focus here on Casual Genius. Yeah. And I don't know how much research or how much education's done with players now around flow, but there's a lot of science coming out, and it's, for those that aren't aware, it's that state where, and we've all experienced it, it's that state that I think we're currently in now. The time's going pretty quickly. Yeah. And you're not really thinking about anything else that's going on. You're almost in a time warp, and it's just the right level of challenge, just the right level of difficulty, and you've got the just enough skill to undertake the activity. And a lot of the time, sport triggers flow, or coaching triggers flow, or training triggers flow, or for some people, work triggers flow. And it's been called basically the highest state that you can exist in. And what I wanted to ask was, or what I wanted to know was, are there ways, you can call it in the zone, for example. Are there ways that you trigger being in the zone, or are there certain situations that put you in the zone or in flow? Are there certain activities that you undertake because all right, I'm going to have to really concentrate when I do this, but I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah,
I've been playing senior football at Melbourne with Melbourne City's youth team, and before FitMind, I was always I was in the zone, but I wasn't enjoying it because all that nervous pressure I had. And then after I decided to do FitMind, I just went into every game saying, you know what, I'm gonna concentrate, I'm gonna work so hard, but I'm gonna enjoy it, and because like I told you, my motto before, I'm not doing well when I know I'm not enjoying it. And I thought that if I can just concentrate and enjoy myself when I play, and just for 90 minutes, I know that I can get the best out of myself and my teammates as well. And
so it's almost like, it's what we were just talking about. You've given yourself that other avenue. You've given yourself FitMind, and it's almost a double-edged thing where it is your business, and it's your little activity that you've done on the side, but it's also a support system, and it's helped you twice in one go. It's like two birds with one stone. And you're sort of thinking now, you're not going into games going, oh, if I stuff up,
that's what it was before FitMind.
So you're going into games with that enjoyment. You're going, well, it's not that big a deal. It's actually not that big a deal. And with your advantage, and most players are in the same boat, it's hard to realize, coaches too, you've actually got a lot of history backing you up. So you wouldn't be playing at that level if you hadn't performed well in the past. So most rational people can see that and say, well, that's one poor performance or one poor moment, but he's had 100 good ones. He wouldn't, or she wouldn't have gotten to this stage if they hadn't. So you've got that to bank on as well. And it's very important that people know and understand how to find that state of flow and how to how to discover that moment where you're not identifying time. You're not thinking about, what am I going to do tomorrow morning? What am I, what homework have I got due? You're so focused and you're enjoying it so much that you're just there. Yeah. You're only there in that one place. I think you played like that on Saturday night, by the way. You saved one in the top corner. I'm going, mate, this guy's... And it's important to have things in your life, whether it's your sport or whether it's something that you do outside, that allows you to trigger that state. Because if you can trigger that state, a lot of the thoughts, because they are just thoughts, it's a thought. It pops into your head and then it pops out of your head. And you can almost just watch it. But if you know how to find that state allows you to be in a place where those thoughts aren't even coming. They're not even there because you're so focused and you're so concentrated and you're so in tune with what you're doing. Almost like there was a legendary F1 driver, Ayrton Senna, who used to say, he used to complete these laps and people would be like, how on earth did you do that? How on earth? Like every corner was perfect. And he goes, when I'm in that state, it feels like I'm in a tunnel. And there's just me, the car, and the tunnel. And all I can see coming towards me is the corners. And I'm just taking them. And he goes, something else takes over. And obviously to build up to that level, you need to have the skill to be able to undertake it. The challenge can't be too big for you to handle, because then you move into the realm of anxiety. You move into a place where you're thinking about what you're doing because you don't have the necessary skill. But if you've got the necessary skill, you're doing an activity where it's just challenging enough that it's almost like that carrot and stick. You're just there and it's just challenging enough. It keeps you locked in, engaged. And he used to describe it beautifully. He said it like that. It was a tunnel and all I could see were these corners coming towards me. And he goes, for that, whatever it is, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, there was nothing else. Nothing else whatsoever. So I think there's a real connection and there's a real lesson to be learned in flow states and how they can help someone's mentality, especially youth athletes, because if they can find that activity, whether it's their sport or whether it's something else, but if they can find that activity that triggers that flow state, then they might not have those thoughts, or it can help them to deal with those thoughts. There was a technique I learned very early on when I was coaching, that the thought bubble technique. So it's almost like every thought that pops up in your head is just a bubble, and you can just poke it. And it pops and it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. So you watch it and you go, oh yeah, that's that thought. I'm having that thought. I'm having, I'm angry at the moment. And then you look at it and you go, pop. And it's gone. And it's little techniques like that, little tools like that can help a player's mentality. So what I wanted to do just to close off was, is there any advice that you'd give to young players or players who are hoping to get to your level? And obviously you yourself have got a long way to go in professional sport, but is there any advice that you'd like to give young players who are aspiring to be at your level, or maybe who are at similar levels to you, either in football or in other sports, and ways that you have dealt with those emotions yourself?
The first thing, like I said, is enjoy it, because enjoying a sport means you're happy, you're smiling, you're buzzing, you can't wait to do it again or play good again, or don't like it. When I'm enjoying something, it just pops out all the negative thoughts and they just separate. Another thing is when you get rejected from a team or something like that. My uncle gave me a saying, telling me that when one door closes, another opens, and in my life, I've just taken that as it's come.
Look, it's like I said earlier, it's quite incredible, not the change in personality, but the advancement that you've made from the player that I knew, or the person that I knew at 11 or 12 years old, who was very easily frustrated and extremely passionate and clearly talented. the advancement that you've made has been staggering. And when I heard about FitMind and when I heard what you were doing, I was really excited. I went, I've got to bring him in to have a chat to him. So thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
To have a chat. It was quite brave of you, mate. It's, you know, a lot of these things are not easy to talk about, especially when you're playing at this level. And, you know, a lot of the things that you shared were quite personal. So I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure this is going to be really valuable for not only players, but for coaches to listen to. So I really appreciate it, mate.
Thanks for having me on here. Pleasure.
Good man. Where can we find FitMind?
We have an Instagram called FitMind.app. We're also on Snapchat. It's called FitMind App, and we've also got a YouTube channel where we post different type of content, and that's just called FitMind. Okay, beautiful. So make sure you check out FitMind App, and if you're experiencing any feelings like that, don't be shy to reach out. And you know, there's nothing wrong with seeking help or speaking to others. It's very, very important, especially for young people, to know that. So thanks again, Thank
Ahmed.
you. Thanks so much.
Good stuff, man.